The CV-22 Osprey's rotors churned against 70-mile-per-hour winds as Captain Aria Cole fought to keep her aircraft steady. Hurricane Diana's outer bands lashed the Pacific Fleet below, but somewhere in that chaos, Marines were trapped on an island that would be underwater within hours. Her mission seemed simple: deliver ammunition to the evacuation zone. What she didn't know was that enemy submarines were already moving through the storm, and her routine supply run was about to become the most important flight of her military career. If you've ever wondered what it takes to fly into a hurricane for your fellow Americans, you're about to find out. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I love connecting with viewers from across our great nation. The weather radar looked like a Christmas tree gone wrong. Red and orange blotches covered the screen, each one representing wind speeds that would ground most aircraft. Captain Aria Cole traced her finger along the storm's eye, a tiny circle of calm in a sea of chaos. "How's it looking, Captain?" Corporal Amy Chin asked, loading equipment bags into the back of the Osprey. Her movements were quick and practiced, every motion serving a purpose. "Like flying into a washing machine," Aria said, tapping the screen. "But we've got a window. Hurricane Diana's moving northwest at 12 knots. That gives us maybe 3 hours before the back wall hits." She'd flown through worse. Not in the Marines, but back when she worked civilian search and rescue in Alaska. Fishermen didn't stop getting into trouble just because the weather turned bad. Neither did Marines. The hangar buzzed with activity. Crews loaded supplies onto helicopters and transport planes. Everyone moved with the controlled urgency that came before a big operation. Aria had seen it dozens of times, but something felt different today. Captain David Rodriguez appeared at her elbow, coffee in hand despite the early hour. They called him Tank, and watching him walk, you could see why. He moved like he expected the ground to give way before he did. "My boys are scattered across 6 islands, Tank said. Some of the locals are being stubborn. Don't want to leave their homes. Can't say I blame them," Aria said. She'd pulled enough people off sinking boats to know that leaving everything behind wasn't easy. "Where do you need me first?" Tank pulled out a folded map, spreading it on the nearest table. Red X's marked positions across the island chain. Tango Island has 200 Marines and about 50 civilians who missed the first evacuation. They need ammunition for the 50 cal positions we set up on the ridges. Aria studied the map. Tango Island sat right in the hurricane's projected path. "What's so important about those positions?" "Intel says there might be unfriendly submarines in the area. Can't confirm it yet, but Admiral Thompson wants our boys ready for anything." The Osprey's twin engines whined to life behind them. Amy Chin gave a thumbs up from the cargo ramp. "Everything looks secure." "Ammunition run in a hurricane," Aria said. "Just another Tuesday in paradise." Tank almost smiled. "You've done worse." "Yeah, but I got paid better for it." This time Tank did smile. "You miss civilian flying?" Aria looked out at the storm clouds building on the horizon. Back in Alaska, she'd pulled 17 people out of the Bering Sea during a winter storm that meteorologists still talked about. The Coast Guard had called it impossible. She'd called it Tuesday. "Sometimes," she said. "But those fishermen never said thank you." "Your Marines do." Tank nodded toward the Osprey. "Speaking of Marines, you're getting a passenger. Sergeant Williams requested a ride." "Ghost Williams?" Aria knew the name. Everyone in the Pacific Fleet knew Ghost Williams. Special operations. The kind of guy who disappeared for months at a time and came back without talking about where he'd been. That's the one. He's got business on Tango Island. Aria folded the map and tucked it into her flight suit. "What kind of business?" "The kind I don't ask about." Thunder rolled across the base. The storm was getting closer. Through the hangar doors, Aria could see palm trees bending in the wind. Rain had started to fall in felt, heavy drops that sounded like marbles hitting the metal roof. Amy Chin jogged over, rain already darkening her uniform. "Aircraft's ready, Captain. We've got enough fuel for the round trip plus reserves. Weather's going to get interesting, though." Aria grabbed her helmet and started walking toward the Osprey. The rotors were already turning, kicking up dust and debris. She had to raise her voice to be heard. "Chen, what exactly are we carrying back there?" "Standard small arms ammunition, Captain. 50 cal rounds, some mortar shells. Nothing fancy." But as Aria climbed into the pilot's seat, she noticed Amy's expression. The corporal was good at her job, maybe too good. And something about the way she'd said nothing fancy didn't sit right. Aria strapped herself in and began her pre-flight checklist. Outside, the storm was building into something that would make headlines. Inside, she had the feeling this mission was going to be anything but routine. The radio crackled to life with an urgent transmission from Fleet Command. "Osprey 77, Fleet Command. Priority transmission." Aria pressed the radio button. 77 here. "Go ahead, Command. Be advised, sonar has picked up unidentified submarine activity in your operational area. Maintain radio contact every 15 minutes. Tank looked up from the map he was studying. Even Amy Chen paused in her equipment check. "Submarines changed everything." "Copy that, Command. Any specifics on those contacts?" "Negative. Proceed with mission as planned, but stay alert." Aria switched to intercom. "Chen, Williams, you hear that?" "Roger, Captain." Amy's voice came through the headset, calm as always. But she moved a little faster, securing the cargo. Sergeant Williams appeared in the cockpit doorway. He was smaller than most Marines, which probably helped in his line of work. His gear was different too, specialized equipment that Aria didn't recognize. "Mind if I ask what brings special ops to an ammunition run?" Aria said. Williams settled into the jump seat behind her. "There's a radar installation on Tango Island. Old equipment, but it sees things our satellites miss." "And you're going to do what exactly?" "Make sure it stays ours." The wind hit them as soon as they cleared the hangar. The Osprey rocked like a boat in heavy seas. Aria felt the aircraft's weight shift as the rotors fought against the crosswind. "This is going to be interesting," she said, more to herself than anyone else. She pulled collective and the Osprey lifted off. The base fell away beneath them, looking small and fragile against the dark ocean. Lightning flickered inside the storm clouds ahead. "How long you been flying these things?" Williams asked. 2 years military. But I've been flying helicopters for 8 years total." Aria adjusted the controls as they hit another gust. "Started in Alaska, pulling fishermen out of the water. Civilian rescue work. That's different from this." "People in trouble are people in trouble," Aria said. "Doesn't matter if they're wearing uniforms." Amy's voice came through the intercom. "Captain, I'm showing some unusual readings on the cargo bay sensors." Aria glanced at her instruments. Everything looked normal. "What kind of readings?" "Temperature fluctuations. Might be the weather, but I want to double-check the ammunition." "Go ahead." Through her headset, Aria could hear Amy moving around in the back. The corporal was thorough, maybe too thorough. Most crew chiefs would have chalked up sensor readings to the storm. They hit the hurricane's outer bands 20 minutes out from base. The Osprey bucked like an angry horse. Rain hammered the windscreen so hard Aria could barely see the instruments 6 inches in front of her face. "Williams, you ever fly in weather like this?" "Once. Over Afghanistan. Sandstorm that grounded everything else for 3 days." "What were you doing up there?" "My job." That was all she was going to get from him. Special ops guys were like that. They talked when they had something to say, and stayed quiet the rest of the time. The radio crackled with static. 7-7, this is Tango Base. How's your approach looking?" Aria keyed the mic, rough but manageable. "ETA 12 minutes. Be advised, we've got visual on 2 unidentified aircraft to your southwest. Could be civilian evacuation flights running late." "Could be," Williams said quietly. "Or could be something else." Aria checked her radar. Two blips showed up at the edge of the screen, flying low and fast. Too fast for civilian aircraft in this weather. Amy, how's that cargo check going? Almost done, Captain. But I need to tell you something about this ammunition. Go ahead. Some of these containers aren't standard small arms rounds. I'm seeing demolition charges, electronic equipment, things that don't belong in a routine supply run. Aria felt her jaw tighten. She'd been lied to. Not directly, but by omission, which was almost worse. Williams, you want to explain this? The radar installation I mentioned? If we can't hold the island, we need to make sure the enemy can't use it either. So I'm not just delivering ammunition. I'm delivering the means to blow up our own equipment. If it comes to that, yes. The Osprey shuddered as they flew into a wall of rain. Visibility dropped to 0. Aria had to rely entirely on instruments, flying by feel and experience. Admiral Thompson's orders, Williams added. Need to know basis. And I didn't need to know? You needed to fly. That's what you're good at. Amy's voice cut through the tension. Captain, those aircraft on radar? They're not flying evacuation patterns. They're circling back toward Tango Island. Aria's hands tightened on the controls. The storm was the least of their problems now. Lightning illuminated the cockpit for a split second. In that moment, Aria could see Tango Island ahead, a dark shape against the churning ocean. Marines were down there, counting on her to bring them what they needed to fight. But what they needed wasn't just ammunition anymore. Williams, what aren't you telling me about this mission? Before he could answer, the radio erupted with static and shouting voices. Emergency transmissions from Tango Island filled the airwaves, and none of the news was good. The emergency transmissions were chaos. Multiple voices talking at once, radio discipline falling apart as Marines on Tango Island reported contact. Tango Base, we've got movement in the water. Small boats, maybe 6 or 7. Negative visual on aircraft. Repeat, we do not have visual on. Static cut through everything. Then silence. Aria tried the radio. Tango Base, this is Osprey 7-7. Do you copy? Nothing. Williams leaned forward. Can you reach them on emergency frequency? I'm trying. Aria switched channels and tried again. Still nothing. Either their radios are down, or something's jamming them. The storm's was directly over Tango Island now. Through breaks in the clouds, Aria could see the Marine positions on the ridge lines. Tiny figures moved between sandbagged positions, but at this distance she couldn't tell if they were fighting or just getting ready to fight. I need to put us down, Aria said. This weather's getting worse, and if those Marines are under attack, they need that ammunition now. Roger that, Amy said through the intercom. But Captain, about those demolition charges. There's something else. What now? They're not just for destroying equipment. Some of these are shaped charges designed for underwater use. Anti-submarine warfare. Williams was quiet for a moment. Then he said, the radar installation isn't the only thing worth protecting on that island. Aria fought the controls as wind shear tried to flip them upside down. What else is down there? Sonar array. Passive listening post that's been tracking submarine traffic for 6 months. If the enemy gets their hands on the data, they'll know exactly where all our boats have been operating. The pieces were starting to fit together. Submarines in the area. Unidentified aircraft. A radar installation and sonar array that the enemy would love to capture intact. So this isn't an evacuation support mission at all, Aria said. It's a defensive action. It's whatever it needs to be. Aria found a small clearing on the leeward side of the island. The Osprey touched down hard, bouncing once before settling. She kept the rotors turning, they might need to leave in a hurry. The sudden quiet felt strange after hours of engine noise and radio chatter. Through the cockpit windows, Aria could see Marines moving through the jungle. They moved with purpose, weapons ready. Tank Rodriguez appeared at the edge of the clearing, jogging toward the Osprey with 3 other Marines. His uniform was soaked through, and mud covered his boots up to the ankles. Williams was already moving toward the cargo ramp. "I'll help Chen get the equipment unloaded." "No," Aria said. "You'll explain what's really happening here." Tank reached the aircraft before Williams could answer. His face was grim. "Good to see you made it," Tank said, climbing aboard. "We've got problems." "What kind of problems?" Aria asked. "The kind that swim underwater and carry assault rifles." Tank wiped rain from his face. "Sonar picked up 4 submarines about an hour ago. Then our communications went down." "Jamming?" "That's what we thought. Until we found this." Tank held up a small electronic device, no bigger than a cell phone. Wires hung from one end, and the plastic casing was cracked. "What is it?" Amy asked, looking up from the equipment she was organizing. "Signal booster," Williams said. "Someone's been helping those submarines coordinate their approach." Aria stared at the device. "You mean we've got enemy agents on the island?" Tank said. "We found 2 of them near the sonar installation. They won't be reporting back." Thunder rolled overhead, but it sounded different now. More regular, like engines. "Those aircraft we spotted," Aria said. "They're coming back." Williams moved to a window and looked up through the canopy. "Can't see anything in this weather, but I can hear them." Amy finished checking the demolition charges. "Captain, if we're going to use these underwater charges against submarines, we need to get them positioned before the storm passes." "Why before?" "Because once the eye moves on, we'll have 100-mile-per-hour winds again. Nobody's going underwater in that." Tank nodded. "My boys have identified the submarine positions. 3 of them are sitting in the deep channel on the north side of the island. Perfect position to launch an assault once the weather clears." "What about the 4th submarine?" "That's the problem. We lost track of it." The radio crackled back to life. Not their radio, a different frequency, speaking in a language Aria didn't recognize. Williams grabbed a headset and listened. "Russian," he said after a moment. "They're coordinating something. Sounds like a countdown." Amy looked up from the charges she was preparing. "Countdown to what?" Before anyone could answer, explosions echoed across the island. Not close enough to shake the Osprey, but close enough to be felt. "That's our perimeter positions," Tank said, reaching for his weapon. "They're testing our defenses." Aria looked at the storm clouds swirling overhead. The eye of the hurricane was moving past them. They had maybe 30 minutes before the back wall of the storm hit with full force. "Williams, those demolition charges. Can they stop submarines?" "If we can get them in the right position, yes. Then we better move fast. Because I don't think those Russians are going to wait for better weather." The sound of engines grew louder overhead, and this time Aria could see shapes moving through the clouds. Large shapes, flying in formation. The real battle was about to begin. The first aircraft broke through the clouds like a shark cutting through dark water. Aria caught a glimpse of swept wings and external fuel tanks before it disappeared back into the storm. "Transport aircraft," Williams said, binoculars pressed to his eyes. "Big ones. They're dropping something." Parachutes bloomed in the gray sky, dozens of them scattered across the wind. But these weren't supply drops. "Paratroopers," Tank said. He was already moving, checking his rifle. "Chen, how fast can you get those charges ready?" 5 minutes for the underwater demolitions," Amy said. "But I need someone who knows the submarine positions." "I can mark them," Williams said. "But we need to move now. Once those troops hit the ground, they'll secure the beaches." Aria made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed in peacetime. "Tank, take your Marines and hold the perimeter. Williams, Chen, you're with me. We're taking those charges out in the Osprey." "Captain, this aircraft isn't designed for combat operations," Amy said. "It's designed to do whatever I tell it to do." Aria was already running through pre-flight procedures. Besides, those submarines won't expect an attack from the air. The Osprey's engines spun up as enemy paratroopers landed across the island. Through the rain-streaked windows, Aria could see muzzle flashes in the jungle. Tanks Marines were already engaged. 7-7, this is Tango Base. Tank's voice came through the radio, static-filled but clear. We've got approximately 60 enemy troops on the ground. They're moving toward both the radar installation and the sonar array. Copy, Tango Base. We're taking the fight to their submarines. Negative, 7-7. You're not equipped for. Aria switched off the radio. Sometimes it was better to ask forgiveness than permission. Williams had strapped himself into the gunner's position. The Osprey wasn't officially armed, but someone had mounted a .50 caliber machine gun on a flexible mount. Aria didn't ask where it came from. Chen, talk to me about those charges, Aria said, lifting off into the storm. Each one has a proximity fuse and about 20 pounds of high explosive, Amy said. Designed to punch through submarine hulls. But we need to drop them within 50 feet of the target. 50 feet? Aria fought the controls as wind shear tried to slam them into the ocean. In this weather? It's that or let those submarines surface and support the ground assault. Through breaks in the storm, Aria could see the ocean. Dark shapes moved beneath the waves, too regular to be natural. Submarines running shallow, getting ready to surface. Williams, you see them? Affirmative. 3 contacts in the channel, maybe 400 yards from shore. They're positioning for a surface action. The radio exploded with chatter. Tanks Marines were under heavy pressure. The enemy paratroopers were well-trained and well-equipped, pushing toward both strategic installations. Tango Base, this is 7-7. What's your status? We're holding, but they're using the storm for cover. Hard to see them coming until they're right on top of us. Aria dropped the Osprey to 50 feet above the water. Waves crashed just below the aircraft's belly, sending spray across the windows. The storm was getting worse as the eye passed completely over the island. First submarine, dead ahead, Williams called out. Range 800 yards. Aria could see it now, a dark shadow beneath the green water. The submarine's conning tower was just visible, probably preparing to surface. Chen, you ready back there? Charges armed and ready. Give me a stable platform for 10 seconds. 10 seconds might as well have been 10 minutes in this weather. But Aria had done impossible things before. She steadied the aircraft, fighting every gust and downdraft. Dropping now. The Osprey lurched upward as Amy released the first charge. Aria counted seconds, then banked hard to the right as the explosion sent a column of water skyward. Direct hit. Williams shouted. That submarine's not going anywhere. 2 more to go, and the storm was getting worse. Aria's arms ached from fighting the controls, and sweat ran into her eyes despite the cold air rushing through the aircraft. Second target, 2 o'clock, Williams called. This submarine was deeper, harder to see through the churning water. Aria had to get closer, dropping to 30 feet above the waves. Chen, this one's going to be tricky. I see it, Captain. Adjusting fuse timing for deeper detonation. The second charge dropped clean, disappearing into the dark water. 5 seconds passed. 10. Then the ocean erupted in a massive geyser that rocked the Osprey like a toy. That's 2 down, Amy said. But I'm only showing 1 charge left, and Williams spotted 4 submarines. Where's the 4th one? Aria asked, scanning the water. Williams was quiet for a moment, studying his instruments. Captain, I think we've got a problem. That 4th submarine isn't in the channel with the others. Then where is it? It's moving. Fast. Heading for the harbor where all the civilian evacuation ships are anchored. Aria's blood went cold. There were still 3 transport ships in the harbor, loaded with civilians who couldn't be evacuated before the storm hit. Families with children, elderly people, everyone who couldn't make it onto the earlier flights. How long until it reaches the harbor? At current speed? Maybe 15 minutes. Amy checked her equipment one more time. Captain, I've got one charge left, but if that submarine's moving, we'll have to catch it in open water. Can you modify the fuse for a moving target? Maybe. But it'll be a one-shot deal. Miss, and those civilian ships are sitting ducks. Aria banked the Osprey toward the harbor, pushing the engines to maximum power. Behind them, explosions continued to echo across Tango Island as tanks Marines fought to hold their positions. The radio crackled with a new voice, speaking accented English. American aircraft, you have interfered with our operations for the last time. Prepare to be destroyed. Williams looked up from his weapons controls. Captain, we've got company. Through the storm clouds, Aria could see fighter aircraft diving toward them. Fast, sleek, and armed with missiles. The real fight was just beginning. The enemy fighters came out of the storm like bullets, their engines screaming over the wind. Aria threw the Osprey into a diving turn that would have torn the wings off a lesser aircraft. Missile lock warning. Williams shouted, watching his defensive systems light up like a Christmas tree. 2 contacts, closing fast. Hold on. Aria pulled the Osprey through a maneuver that pushed the aircraft beyond its design limits. The enemy missiles shot past them, exploding harmlessly in the ocean spray. Chen, how much time do we have on that submarine? Aria asked, leveling out just above the wave tops. Maybe 10 minutes before it reaches the harbor, Amy called from the back. But Captain, those fighters are coming around for another pass. Williams had the .50 caliber ready, but trying to hit a fighter jet with a machine gun was like swatting flies with a sledgehammer. I can't get a clean shot in this weather, he said. The radio crackled with Tank's voice from Tango Island. 7-7, we're taking heavy casualties up here. These aren't just paratroopers, they're special forces. Professional soldiers. How long can you hold? Not long. They've got us surrounded at both installations. Williams, if you're planning to use those demolition charges on our equipment, now might be the time. Williams looked at Amy, then at Aria. The charges are all deployed on submarines. We've got nothing left for the installations. Then you better figure something else out, Tank said. Because in about 5 minutes, this island's going to be in enemy hands. Aria's mind raced. 1 submarine heading for civilian ships. Enemy fighters trying to shoot them down. Marines trapped on an island with no way to destroy sensitive equipment if they were overrun. Williams, those demolition charges Chen's been handling. Are they the only explosives we've got? No. The Osprey carries emergency destruction charges for sensitive avionics. Small ones, but they pack a punch. Amy's voice came through the intercom with new urgency. Captain, I've got visual on the submarine. It's surfacing near the harbor entrance. Through the storm, Aria could see it, a dark shape rising from the depths like a sea monster. The submarine's deck gun was already manned, crew members in rain gear preparing to fire on the defenseless civilian ships. That's a Kilo-class attack submarine, Williams said. Probably carrying a full complement of Special Forces troops. The enemy fighters were circling back, trying to get another missile lock. But the storm was working in Aria's favor now, making it hard for their targeting systems to track the Osprey through all the rain and interference. I've got an idea, Aria said. But it's going to sound crazy. Crazier than what we're already doing? Amy asked. Much crazier. Aria banked toward the submarine, dropping even lower. Chen, that last demolition charge. Can you jury-rig it to explode on impact instead of using the proximity fuse? Probably. Why? Because we're going to ram that submarine. Williams stared at her. Captain, that's suicide. Not if we do it right. Aria pointed at the submarine's conning tower. See that deck gun? They can't fire on the civilian ships if they're dealing with us. But they also can't dive with us sitting on top of them. Amy was already working on the demolition charge, rewiring the fuse mechanism. This is insane, but it might work. Impact detonation, 30-second delay. 30 seconds to what? To get clear before this thing turns that submarine into scrap metal. The Osprey shuddered as enemy machine gun fire from the submarine stitched across their armor. Aria felt the aircraft lurch as bullets found their mark, but the engines kept running. "Williams, can you keep those deck gunners busy?" "Roger that." Williams opened up with the .50 caliber, sending tracers across the submarine's deck. Enemy sailors dove for cover, abandoning their positions. Aria lined up her approach, fighting crosswinds that tried to push them off course. The Osprey wasn't designed for precision flying in hurricane conditions, but she'd done impossible things with aircraft before. "Chen, charge ready?" "Armed and ready." "Impact fuse set." "On my mark, drop it and then hold on. We're going to be flying very close to some very angry people." The submarine loomed ahead, growing larger by the second. Aria could see individual crew members on the deck, some trying to man the anti-aircraft guns, others preparing assault boats for the attack on civilian ships. "Drop it now!" Amy released the charge. It fell like a stone, striking the submarine's hull just forward of the conning tower. Aria pulled up hard, engines screaming as she climbed away from the water. 30 seconds. Amy shouted. Behind them, the submarine's captain was screaming orders in Russian. The vessel began an emergency dive, but it was too late. 20 seconds. 15. Williams was watching the enemy fighters. "They're lining up for another attack run." "Let them come," Aria said. "In 10 seconds, they're going to have other things to worry about." 5. 4. 3. The explosion lifted the Osprey 50 feet in the air, a massive shockwave that turned the submarine into twisted metal and steam. Debris rained down around them, pieces of hull and superstructure crashing into the ocean. "Direct hit!" Williams shouted. "That submarine's finished." But their celebration was short-lived. One of the enemy fighters had managed to get a missile lock during the explosion. Warning alarms filled the cockpit as the missile streaked toward them. "Incoming!" Aria threw the Osprey into a violent evasive maneuver, but this time the missile was too close. The explosion tore through the aircraft's tail section. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the cockpit windows, and the Osprey began to spin out of control. "We're hit!" Williams called out. Losing hydraulic pressure. Aria fought the controls, trying to regain stability. The aircraft was badly damaged, but still flying. Barely. "Chen, you okay back there?" "Alive, but we've got problems. I'm showing fuel leaks, and the cargo bay is taking on water." Through her headset, Aria could hear Tank's voice from Tango Island. But the transmission was breaking up, filled with static and interference. 7-7, under heavy attack, need immediate, positions overrun. The radio died completely. They were on their own now, flying a crippled aircraft through the worst storm any of them had ever seen. But the civilian ships in the harbor were safe. The submarine threat was neutralized. Now they had to figure out how to save themselves. The Osprey limped through the hurricane like a wounded bird. Aria nursed the controls, coaxing every ounce of lift from damaged rotors. Hydraulic fluid mixed with rainwater on the cockpit floor, and the smell of burning electronics filled the air. "How's our fuel situation?" she asked Amy. "Not good. Maybe 15 minutes of flight time, and that's if we don't spring any more leaks." Williams was trying to raise someone on the radio, cycling through every frequency he knew. Finally, a voice came through the static. Any station, this is Admiral Thompson aboard USS Wasp. We are conducting search and rescue operations in the area." "Admiral Thompson." Williams grabbed the microphone. "This is Sergeant Williams aboard Osprey 77. We are damaged and low on fuel, requesting immediate assistance." "Williams? What's your status?" "We lost contact with Tango Island 2 hours ago." "Ma'am, the island came under coordinated attack by enemy special forces. Captain Cole and her crew neutralized 3 submarines and prevented an assault on the civilian evacuation ships." Through her headset, Aria could hear the surprise in the Admiral's voice. "Captain Cole? I thought you were running ammunition supplies." "Plans changed, Admiral. What's the status of the Marines on Tango Island? There was a pause. Then, Captain Rodriguez's unit held both strategic installations. Heavy casualties, but the radar array and sonar post remain in American hands. The hurricane's passing now, we should have clear skies in 30 minutes. Aria felt something she hadn't felt in hours, relief. Hank and his Marines had done the impossible. Admiral, we need immediate medical evacuation for wounded on Tango Island, Williams said. And we need somewhere to set this bird down before she falls apart. Roger that. We have the Wasp position 12 miles southeast of your location. Can you make it? Aria looked at her instruments. Fuel was critical, hydraulics were failing, and one engine was running rough. But she'd brought damaged aircraft home before. We'll make it, Admiral. See you in 20 minutes. Amy appeared in the cockpit doorway, first aid kit in hand. She'd been treating a shrapnel wound on her arm, but hadn't mentioned it until now. You're hurt, Aria said. Just a scratch. I've had worse. Amy looked out at the clearing sky. Captain, what you did back there with that submarine. That wasn't in any flight manual. Sometimes you have to write your own manual. Williams folded his maps and secured his equipment. The demolition charges, the submarine attack, keeping those fighters off our back. I've worked with a lot of pilots over the years. Most of them wouldn't have attempted half of what you just pulled off. Aria didn't know what to say to that. She'd just done what needed doing. The storm clouds were breaking apart now, revealing patches of blue sky. Through the gaps, Aria could see the USS Wasp in the distance, a gray island of safety in the vast ocean. There she is, she said. Most beautiful sight I've seen all day. The flight deck of the amphibious assault ship was busy with activity. Helicopters came and went, ferrying wounded from Tango Island. Medical teams waited with stretchers. Damage control parties stood by with fire extinguishers and rescue equipment. Aria brought the Osprey in on approach, fighting crosswinds from the storm's trailing edge. The aircraft shuddered and groaned, but the landing gear extended and locked. Osprey 7-7, you are cleared for landing. Emergency vehicles standing by. The touchdown was harder than Aria would have liked, but they were down in one piece. As soon as the rotors stopped spinning, medical teams swarmed the aircraft. Admiral Thompson was waiting as they climbed out. She was smaller than Aria had expected, but her presence filled the flight deck. 30 years of naval service showed in her bearing and the way younger officers stepped aside to let her pass. Captain Cole. Sergeant Williams. The Admiral shook hands with each of them. Corporal Chen. I've been getting reports from various sources about your mission today. Ma'am, I should explain about exceeding our original orders, Aria began. Captain, you turned a routine supply mission into a strategic victory. 3 enemy submarines destroyed, civilian ships protected, and our intelligence installations secured. I'd say that deserves commendation, not explanation. Tank Rodriguez appeared across the flight deck, his arm in a sling but walking under his own power. His fatigues were torn and muddy, and a bandage covered a cut on his forehead. Captain Cole, he called out. Heard you took a little side trip to blow up submarines. Just returning the favor, Aria said. You held those installations against impossible odds. My Marines did the fighting. But without you taking out those submarines, we would have been overrun in the first hour. Admiral Thompson looked out over the ocean, where the last of the storm clouds were disappearing on the horizon. Captain Cole, when I assigned you to this mission, I expected you to deliver ammunition and return to base. What made you decide to engage enemy forces directly? Aria thought about it. Admiral, I spent 8 years pulling people out of situations they couldn't get out of themselves. Didn't matter if they were fishermen in Alaska or Marines on a Pacific island. When people need help, you help them. Even if it means risking your own life. Especially then. Williams was talking to other special operations personnel, sharing intelligence about the enemy forces they'd encountered. Amy was getting her wounded arm properly treated by the ship's medical team. As the sun broke through the clouds for the first time all day, Aria could see other ships on the horizon. The entire Pacific Fleet seemed to be converging on this area, drawn by reports of the action. "Captain," Admiral Thompson said quietly, "how would you feel about a change of assignment?" "I'm putting together a new squadron. Pilots who can think on their feet and adapt to changing situations." Aria looked back at the damaged Osprey, then at Williams and Amy talking with the rescue teams. "Will I be working with good people?" "The best." "Then I'm interested, Admiral." The storm was over. The mission was complete. And Aria Cole had found her place in a military that needed pilots who could do more than just follow orders. She'd started the day as a ferry pilot. She was ending it as something much more important, a Marine who understood that sometimes the most important cargo you carry is the courage to do what's right. If this story of courage and sacrifice inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories.